babies. Welcome back to the podcast. It's so great to have you here. All right, we're going to jump into it today. And today we're going to be talking about the avoidant attachment, or also known as the dismissive avoidant attachment. So this was requested by many people. They're like, Sam, can you please talk about this attachment style? And the reason why, the reason I suspect that many people want to learn more about the avoidant attachment styles for two reasons. So either one, they identify as the avoidant attachment, or two, they are dating somebody who's the avoidant attachment. They want to understand them better. Okay. So hopefully this episode is going to serve both of you guys, the dater and the datee. Yeah, I hope that it serves you guys, and always feel free to send me an inbox after if you want clarity from the episode or something that you took away from it. Feel free to email me or inbox me. You can email me too. That's fine. All right. Okay, so I want to start off with highlighting some of the core traits that an avoidant attachment has, okay? So there's a few of them. They're very independent and self-reliant, okay? And we're going to get into why they are like that later on in the episode. There is this discomfort with emotional intimacy or vulnerability. And again, we're going to get into why that is further on in the episode. And there's a tendency to downplay their own emotions and other people's emotions. So if you have dated an avoidant attachment, you might have felt gaslit by them. And they're not trying to, by the way, okay? Let me be clear in this episode. This episode is not like tearing the avoidant attachment down, because underneath all of their attachment styles is a very sensitive person, and they have learned to just meet their own needs, and this is their way of surviving, okay? Now, if they're harming people with their treatment, right, doesn't mean that we put up with that. The avoidant attachment does need to recognize where there's gaps in their relationship with themselves and with their partners, and they need to be doing the work to move into the direction of secure attachment. And if they're not, if you're somebody who's dating an avoidant, you have to ask yourself if you're okay with, longer periods of not talking, of sometimes emotional shutdowns. You have to ask yourself if you're okay with that. And if you are, and you know how to navigate through it, then that's great. But if you're not, you don't have to stay with somebody. It is not your responsibility to stay with an avoidant attachment because of, their own traumas, right? Because we're all responsible for healing our own stuff, including avoidant attachments. And although this episode is targeted at avoidant attachment, we're going to be talking about that. One thing that I have noticed is that, and there's studies proven this, but often the anxious attachment and the avoidant attachment end up together. For what reason? I'll probably make an episode on that. Okay. So the last core trait is they have this underlying unconscious belief. Like, they're not conscious of this, but like that feeling of like, I don't need anybody, because they feel like they can't rely on people. Okay. They were taught earlier on as they were kids, usually, okay, this is usually where our attachment styles develop. They were taught early on that their needs didn't matter, so that they had to meet their own needs. And so imagine as a child, if you're having to meet your own needs, as a child, you shouldn't be having to do that, okay? It's great to know how to self-regulate as a child, but we need our primary caregivers to be able to tend to us emotionally, physically, mentally, like all of the things, okay? That is the responsibility that you take on when you become a parent, right? And so that's never on the child, okay? But now that you're an adult and you're listening to this, if you're the avoidant attachment, this is your sign that there needs to be some underlying work that needs to be addressed. And I understand why you feel that fear of getting close to people, because that is one of the things is, if you're somebody dating an avoidant attachment, a lot of times avoidant attachments, they're so misunderstood. They're very misunderstood because they feel like, just emotions can be very overwhelming for them, and they don't know what to do with them, okay? And again, it's often because their emotions weren't tended to them as a child, right? So when we're not taught what to do with our emotions, and then we take our survival patterns from when we were children, and it starts to develop and come into our romantic relationships as adults, right? But the good news is that you don't have to stay in avoidant attachment. You don't have to stay in avoidant attachment. And also, these are just labels, okay? Any type of theory, whether you're avoidant attachment, anxious attachment, just like even those like personality quizzes that you take and they give you like whatever you are, or if you're really attached to your sign, or you're really attached to your human design, whatever it is, remember that those are just guidelines, and you are so fucking unique and have intersectional experiences that don't coincide with other avoidant attachments and don't coincide with your other signs. And I just want to make that really clear, because we can often get so wrapped up in these labels, and then we start to like over-identify with them, and then it's really hard to get out of or move towards secure attachment, or just even find your own unique identity. Okay? Just because you have traits of an avoidant attachment, it doesn't mean that you are completely avoidant. It does not mean that there is anything wrong with you. Okay? These are just certain patterns and survival patterns that you've learned as a child. And it's really important that you find your own unique pathway and what actually feels good for you, okay? Not the patterns that you're in right now, but what actually feels good for you moving forward, okay? I just want to make that clear. Okay. And so when we see these patterns where someone felt like the avoidant attachment, they really value independence, and they're very strong. I am having a brain fart. Okay. Avoidant attachment, it's a pattern where someone values independence so strongly that closeness can feel really uncomfortable for them. And it can feel threatening, like life-threatening, okay? So I want you to keep that in mind. And if you're an avoidant attachment and you're listening to this, or if you have traits in avoidant attachment, I want you to know that your life is not at risk when you are in a relationship. Maybe it is, and maybe you're like in like a really abusive situation, then you got to get out of that, right? But majority of the time, you are not at risk, and there's this fear that is just taking over your body. And that's why we do somatic work. That's why I have clients in my containers where they have gone from anxious attachment to secure attachment, okay? Now, when we are all a little bit of each of these attachments. We have a main attachment, and then we have different traits from other attachments too, okay? So I have seen and helped clients go from anxiously attached as their main attachment to securely attached. I've seen avoidants go from avoidant to securely attached, okay? And I've seen just like the whole other side of the spectrum, but that's for another day to talk about those case studies. Okay, so when we're talking about an avoidant attachment, avoidant attachments, it's very likely that they'll pull away when things get really close. When things get really close, if they get really close to someone or things get really serious, it gets really scary for them because they start to feel like they're depending on another person. And like we spoke about earlier, is that what actually happens is they've learned to meet their own needs. They've learned to just be okay with being independent. But this is the thing. They think that they're okay with being independent. They're always saying, yeah, like, I'm having this stuff happening in my life, but I'm good. Like, I'm actually good. And maybe they are, but underneath that surface level of like, oh, I'm good, and just stating actual things that are actually bothering them and then saying, oh, but it's okay, it's fine. That in itself is like minimizing their emotions because they're used to that. They're used to saying, oh, like I have all this stuff going on. I'm feeling stressed out. I'm feeling anxious. I'm feeling blocked. I'm feeling all of these things, but it's okay. I'm good. And the reason that they say that they're good is because that's their normal. They've grown up with having to be quote unquote good, having to be okay because their emotional needs were not met. And when I say emotional needs, sometimes it's not always abuse. Sometimes it's a parent that's not present, which that can be seen as abuse, yes. But sometimes it's abandonment. Sometimes the parent is physically present, but emotionally they were not, right? And this is where I see a lot of really tragic things happen when somebody can be physically present, a parent or a guardian can be physically present, but then there's abuse that happens within the family. And then, so one, their emotional needs are not being met. And then two, on top of that, they've had extreme trauma happen to them. And when that happens, it's like a double whammy. It's like there's already one complex layer of their emotional needs not being met. And then because their guardians are not emotionally present, there's really tragic things. And oftentimes it happens within the family, whether that's sexual abuse, sexual violence, whether it's physical, domestic violence, whether it's emotional abuse, emotional, mental violence that just happens and, it's just normalized within families, right? So that's the big reason why they pull away, because they're like, they go back to that earliest memory of when they have felt betrayed, where they have felt like no one cares about them or that their needs aren't as important. Okay, and then when someone starts to show that they care, and then they start meeting their needs and they start showing that they really care, right? What happens is they start to get scared because they're like, I do not want to experience rejection again. I don't want to experience abandonment again. I don't want to experience any of that. And they feel like it's better for them to leave first. It's better for them to shut down first. It's better for them to walk away first because they don't want to get hurt. And so and again, like, we know that this is self-sabotage, right? We know that this is self-sabotage, and they may not know that. If you're listening and you're in avoidant attachment, you may not know that that is actually self-sabotage, right? And if this is really speaking to you, I just want you to just be so compassionate with yourself, because you weren't taught how to navigate through all of this, and you weren't taught what was happening for you in your nervous system when you were a child. Maybe you were if you had really conscious parents, but majority of us like didn't have those things explained to us, right? And so how would you know until you found this amazing episode that's changing your life as we speak? Okay. All right. So in relationships, they can seem like emotionally distant, cold, or unavailable. And that can be like an actual truth. But a lot of the times, the emotional distance and the unavailability, again, it's a protection mechanism, right? They're worried that they're going to get hurt. Even if they love somebody, even if like they really truly are like, wow, like I really feel safe with this person, I care about them. But they can, again, just be emotionally distant because there's this crippling fear of, I don't want to get in too deep. What if they hurt me? What if they leave? Right? Okay. In relationships, they also struggle with expressing their feelings or saying what they need. There's that piece of not being able to articulate their emotions. And let me tell you where that derives from. So if they go back to their earliest memory of when they needed an emotional need to be met and it wasn't, okay, oftentimes with kids, sometimes they don't have the proper vocabulary or words, and even sometimes the proper brain development to express exactly what's happening in their body. They don't have those experiences yet to formulate that to an adult, right? And so a lot of the times they can suppress it. And again, if they're already feeling like their needs aren't being met and it doesn't matter, they're going to think, oh, what's the point? I'll just take care of myself, right? And so if they weren't taught how to articulate their emotions, or even, and maybe not even articulate it, but have a safe space to fully have that emotional completion. And when I say emotional completion, For example, if they felt angry and then they started to express their anger and, you know, somebody was like, you need to stop doing that. That is bad. It's bad to be angry. You're not allowed to be angry. Whether they said it in those words or indirectly. That child, like that part of themselves is going to shut down. Okay. And again, if they don't receive the support after these incidences, whether it's traumatic or it's a situation where they were angry or sad or whatever it is, like those emotions that get deemed as bad when no emotion is bad, but those more intense emotions that make people uncomfortable, right? Like if they're not given the opportunity to have support after, to say, hey, you know what, like I noticed that you were really angry today. Do you want to tell me what happened? What was happening for you in your body? What made you feel that way? Right? But oftentimes that's not the response that a child gets. And so it's really important to remember that lack of articulation from the avoidant, it's not them trying to be rude. Majority of the time, it's not them trying to be rude, okay? And it's not that they don't even have the emotional intelligence for that, okay? Avoidants, they actually have like quite an active inner world, okay? What I mean by that is that they're overthinking a lot. They have a lot of internal emotions that haven't had the outlet for it. And so you can imagine the world that it creates inside, right? And they're wondering and they're constantly conceptualizing, well, what does this mean about me? What are people thinking about me? Avoidants do care about what people think. It might not seem like that because they come off as like, you know, they have like this really hard front. They can come off as really cold, like we talked about. But they actually care. They actually care what people think about them. In fact, it can be very crippling for them. It can be so crippling that they'll avoid you at all costs because they care so much about what you think. Now, I'm not enabling this behavior, okay? Again, this is learned behavior and we can have compassion for this. But if somebody really wants to make a relationship work, they have to be really willing to look at their attachment style. They have to be willing to look at their childhood traumas or maybe past relationship traumas. Maybe it didn't happen in childhood. Most of the time it does though. And most of the time it happens, you know, within our relational family systems. And this is not to blame anybody, but this is just the reality of it, is that where we grow up, the dynamics that we grow up in, it really does shape the way that we feel and think about ourselves. And with that being said, that gets to change if we want it to, if we're willing to look at our inner shadows, if we're willing to address our trauma and the stuff that's made us feel really insecure, or the things that have brought us negative belief system about ourselves, about love, about intimacy, about our own confidence. There are ways to shift our thinking and shift our way of feeling about ourselves. But there has to be self-commitment and also too, there has to be a willingness to like learn about your nervous system and learn about your body and how it's actually responding to all these situations, right? Okay. So, avoidants can really struggle with expressing their feelings or saying what they need. Okay, we talked about that. And they often prefer space over connection during conflict. Okay, let's go into that. So, a big reason why they often prefer space over connection is because they have learned to deal with their emotions on their own. Okay, like we've been saying in this episode. And so, if they're used to doing things one way their whole life, dealing with their emotions on their own, and just their emotions, what happens is their system can get so flooded with overwhelm, and that's why they shut down. That's why they take the space. And it is something that they have to learn to be able to hold a bigger capacity for their own emotions and to hold space for their partner's emotions too, because in conflict, we know that through connection, that is where we heal. We don't, and yes, of course, there's always a time and place for space. Okay, sometimes people do need space to just like take the time to process the situation, process the conflict, and then return back. And I think if you're dating an avoidant attachment, or you are the avoidant attachment, one thing that will be really helpful for you is to just like have a one-liner communication of, hey, if you're the avoidant, you can say, hey, I'm processing this and I just need some space, and let them know what that space looks like. Like maybe it's a day, maybe it's a few hours, whatever it is, and just let them know that, reassure them, hey, I'm not going anywhere. I just need some time to process, and I want to come back to this so that we can talk about it when both of our systems are feeling less overwhelmed. Okay? That's a really beautiful boundary, because what you're saying is you're expressing your needs. As an avoidant, you're expressing your needs, and you're saying, hey, I need this, and I want to come back to this because I know that we need to address what's happening between us and have your needs met as well too. Right? So I would encourage you to do that if you're an avoidant. And I would encourage you to be mindful of it too, because, I mean, if you're saying, hey, I need a week, I mean, you can do that, but that's going to be really hard on the other person. And I think, well, when you are in a relationship or you want to make something work, it is important to consider the other person's needs without completely dismissing your own, right? And as you continue to learn and discover more about yourself and about your body, and continue to regulate your nervous system, your capacity is going to grow. You're going to shift more into a secure attachment, and that space period is not going to be as long. You're not going to need it. You're not going to need as much time as you did before, because you've gotten into the habit of processing properly. You've learned new skills. You've learned new body signals and what these sensations that come up in your body, what they're trying to tell you. And so you're going to have better tools to navigate it. And when we have better tools to navigate, then of course our bounce back period is going to be way shorter. And that's what happens in healing. Like, I've seen it with myself, I've seen it with my clients, where it's like their bounce back period just like shortens and shortens and shortens. And what happens is their capacity grows and grows and grows. And that's why their bounce back period gets shorter. Yeah. Okay. I gotta take a sip of my tea because my throat is getting dry as fuck. So 1 second. All right. Okay. So with the space over the connection piece as well too. Now, I know I've said this, where like the avoidant has really learned to deal with things on their own, right? And there does need to be a balance of the space and connection, like we spoke about. Okay. And if you're the avoidant, I'd love for you to reflect on, okay, what do I know that my needs are in conflict? Okay, so maybe you need the space. But how can I also, while taking space, maintain connection? Okay, so maybe you need space from the actual like conflict itself, but maybe you don't need space from the person, or maybe you do. I don't know. That's for you to decide. But you could say, hey, like, I just need some time to process this. And I don't want to stop talking, but this subject, like, can we return to it tomorrow? Can we return to it in a few hours? Okay. That way that person on the other end is not feeling like, oh my God, I'm freaking out. They're going to fucking leave me. And also, we want to hope that the other person on the other end has their own form of regulation, right? Because too, if you do need that space, then you should take it. You should. Yeah. Okay. Oh, this one. Okay. Oh man, I have had this happen to me and seen it happen to many of my clients as well too, but it's the attraction piece. They're very interested at first, and then they lose interest once intimacy starts to get intense or intimacy starts to build. And again, it's very likely that the intimacy feels so intense for them because like I said, avoidants are so misunderstood. They're actually sensitive people and they actually feel very deeply, right? And that feeling very deeply, especially when they get close to someone, especially when, they start to fall for someone, it just feels so scary for them, right? And I'm going to reiterate this all the time, as we all have choices to stay in these situations and when there's conflict, we can continue these patterns, but we have to keep asking ourselves, are these patterns helpful? Are they helpful for me? Because I think as an avoidant, I'm not an avoidant, but I know a lot of avoidants. I've dated avoidants. I have friends who are avoidants. I just know that even in that time of space, it might feel like relief for them. But then a little bit later on, they're like, fuck, I fucked up. Fuck, they feel shame. They feel a lot of shame because they didn't know how to handle their emotions, or they didn't know how to navigate through that overwhelm, right? And so they're just acting on reactivity. And there's so many different ways to navigate instead of acting from reactivity, instead of reacting, right? And that really does come down to how safe you're feeling in your body. It comes down to how safe you feel with your partner, because too, that plays a role. If your partner is, I'm just going to use this word, but if your partner is toxic, it's going to be really hard for you to regulate when you're with them, right? Now, we know that in relationships, like there's conflict in every relationship, right? But when it's with the right person, conflict is going to be resolved on both ends, and there's going to be effort on both ends, right? Regardless if they're avoidant, anxious, whatever it is. And they're going to make that initiative, because if they don't have those skills, they're going to make that initiative to learn those skills by either going to therapy or coaching or reading about it and then integrating what they read, right? There's many ways to heal from these reflections that we get back in our relationships. And especially if with this losing interest once intimacy builds, I mean, that can be a really hard situation to be in. I know I have, where I was in love with this person and we were intimate, and as soon as the intimacy happened, and I felt it in my body, I was like, oh, this man's about to run the other way. And it wasn't because he didn't care about me. Like, it wasn't that at all. I fully understood him. I fully understood him and why it was happening. And it was very hard for me. It was very hard for me. It was heartbreaking. And this is why it's important as an avoidant, because avoidance, like, it's really hard for them to see the people that they care about hurt as well too. And then them thinking like, fuck, like I caused that, It's really hard for them to see that. And that's a big reason and a big incentive to seek help and try and go in a different direction than these patternings that are just like looping on repeat in all your relationships. And again, it's there's no judgment here. There's no judgment, because this patterning has been so ingrained into avoidance that they don't even know it. Like, they don't know why they are the way that they are. And then they start to think that there's something wrong with them. And there's nothing, my love, there's nothing wrong with you, okay? There's just a lot of things that have probably happened to you on an emotional level, and probably some things that you didn't even know were impacting you on an emotional level. and you just were learning how to cope and survive, and you've brought this into your adulthood. But now you're an adult, and it's time for you to take the driver's seat in your relationships and your healing journey, because it does not have to be like this forever unless you choose to stay in this. But there's tools that you can learn. There's so much that you can do, and I can guarantee you that when you start to do the work and on the other side of that, there's fulfilling relationships, there's partners that feel aligned with you, there's partners who understand you. Even if your avoidant attachment does show up, because sometimes our old attachment styles can resurface, right? And that's okay. And being in a relationship with somebody who understands, oh, okay, I see that their avoidant attachment is surfacing, okay? And allowing space for it too, like, we're not perfect. Just as long as you decide, okay, I'm going to come back to what I know is right for me, I'm right for my relationship, I think that is the biggest thing that you can do. Oh my god, I made this lavender tea and I have no idea why it's tasting so bitter tonight. No idea. Okay. I'm just looking at my notes, guys. Okay, so I want to talk about some tips that you can take from here if you're an avoidant. I really feel like this episode should just be directed to avoidants, but if you're dating an avoidant, maybe send this episode to them. Maybe they need to hear this. All right, so one of the biggest things that you can do is like exposing yourself to small increments of vulnerability. Okay, so maybe you share something that's really vulnerable with your partner, and let them know, hey, I'm sharing this, and we can talk about it in this amount of depth, but then after, like, I need to come back to what your normal baseline is. Come back to doing something fun or doing something hands-on, and then start to increase the amount and the depth of vulnerability that you start to expose yourself to with your partner. Or maybe it's not even with a partner, maybe it's with a friend. Some people, their avoidant attachments can show up in friendships too. So wherever you are, just start exposing yourself in small increments, and then start expanding those increments to get larger and larger. But in between that, you have to come back to something that feels like really good for you. So, maybe that's going for a walk. Maybe that's going to play a sport. Maybe it is going to, I don't know, for me, I'm a dancer. Like, maybe it's going to a dance class. Maybe it's dancing in your living room. Or maybe it's just like going to work, okay? Just come back to what feels normal for you, and then get yourself to increase that increment as time goes, okay? When you notice, one thing that's going to be really helpful for you is, if you know that you shut down, I want you to just name it in the moment. So say you're sitting there with your partner and you notice there's conflict coming up, and you're like, I don't want to deal with this. I'm shutting down. I just want to disconnect from this. Okay. You might be just automatically doing that in your head, but then now, because I'm bringing this to your awareness and you're listening to this episode for a reason, you have a good depth of awareness that, okay, I tend to shut down when conflict happens. So I want you to name that out loud with your partner and say, hey, can we pause for 1 second? Because I feel like I'm shutting down right now. And just name it. Name it and sit with it. And then I want you, even if you have to do this in the moment, and this is what I mean, you need to have a partner who's understanding and has patience with you. And vice versa. You got to have patience with your partner too, because this might come up in a different way for them. And it's important that this patience is reciprocal. So say you're in a conflict or there's a vulnerable piece coming up, and just name it. I'm shutting down right now. What does that shutdown feel like in your body? Okay. Maybe you're saying this out loud or in your head. So maybe the shutdown starts to feel like your chest is collapsing. Maybe you start to feel knots in your stomach. Okay. Maybe your shoulders start to like hunch over and you start to curl up. And start to name that. Okay. I notice that my chest is collapsing or my shoulders are collapsing. And just be with it. And you can just say, okay, I'm shutting down right now. And just be with that. Just for a moment. Like, you have to allow yourself to like let that complete its cycle. Okay. And then after a few moments, you can tell yourself, you know what? Even though it feels like I'm shutting down right now, I am open to becoming a little bit more activated. I'm open to opening up a little bit more. And so if your shoulders are hunched over and your chest is collapsing, I just want you to take a deep breath and then exhale, and you can tell yourself, I'm safe. It's safe for me to be vulnerable. It's safe for me to open up. And then just start to open up your chest, lift your chin. And can you do that? Okay. It's safe for me to open up. Open up the chest, open up the shoulders a little bit more. And you're going to start to do the opposite of what your shutdown response is. Okay? And again, you're going to do it small and slowly. You're not going to go from like all hunched over to like fucking open as fuck and chest open. Like, no. Like, go slowly. Okay? LOL if you're watching this video. That movement. Can't wait to rewind that and watch that. Oh, man. And then noticing. So, like, if you notice that you're withdrawing, like, communicate that. And say that to your partner. Hey, I am feeling like I am withdrawing. Okay? And I want you to connect to that withdraw and ask that, like, give your withdrawal a voice, because what happens is when we withdraw, there's multiple things that could be happening, okay? The first thing is like, okay, there's fear coming up. There's overwhelm in the body and in the nervous system. Like, it's just too overwhelming, and it's easier to shut down, okay? There could be a sadness that's coming over you and like just wanting to like numb out, dissociate, and just not feel it, okay? And there can be that just like regular avoidance piece of like just not wanting to deal with it. Okay. So I want you to name that. Okay, notice I'm withdrawing. And I want you to talk, like have a conversation with withdrawal and ask yourself, well, withdrawal, like talk to withdrawal as if it was your fucking best friend. Okay. And you're going to say, withdrawal, what is it that you need me to know right now? And maybe withdrawal is going to say, I am so fucking scared to have this conversation because I don't know what's on the other side of that conversation. If I'm honest with them about how I feel, how is it going to make them feel? What is that going to mean about our relationship? Okay, so if withdrawal is giving you, I'm just giving you an example of what withdrawal could probably be saying, okay? Maybe withdrawal is saying, I'm withdrawing because you know what? I'm scared of what that other person's truth about this situation is going to reflect back to me. I don't want to feel like a bad person, so I'm going to peace out so I don't have to hear it, because I cannot afford to feel, I don't have the capacity to feel bad about myself, because I already know that there's certain things that I need to shift, right? And then when you can pile on other stuff, it's like kicking somebody when they're down, right? So give that withdrawal a fucking voice and keep talking to it and say, okay, withdrawal, I understand that you're feeling this way, and I need you to know that I'm here. I'm here. I'm supporting you. So you're talking to withdrawal from your adult self, okay? You could be talking to withdrawal, you could be talking to fear, you could be talking to sadness, okay? Whatever is coming up for you when like you are feeling like you're shutting down, communicate that. And then communicate with whatever the fuck is coming up for you. So maybe, withdrawal is like, yeah, I'm scared of shit. I'm scared of shit. They need to withdraw. I'm here. I got you, withdrawal. You don't have to withdraw because you have me and I trust me. And I trust me that whatever comes from this situation, I know how to hold myself through it, even if it's painful. Because the truth of it is, you can get yourself through anything. Yes, it can feel emotionally overwhelming. Yes, there can be really shitty things that come with it. Yes, it can be painful. Of course, but we cannot, this is one thing, is we cannot avoid pain in life. A lot of the times our pain is our biggest teacher. And that doesn't mean that you deserve to be hurt or that you're not worthy of good things happening to you or feeling good feelings. Not at all. But a lot of the times, pain comes in the form of teaching us something. And not from like a punishment standpoint. No, it's never like that. But I just know for myself, I've gone through a whole bunch of shit. Like, pretty much anything that you can name, I've been through it. And although it was very painful, it has taught me how to have self-respect. It's taught me what I will and will not tolerate. It has taught me who I want to become and who I don't want to become. And so these moments where these intensified emotions, these intensified pains, these intensified thoughts show up, and you feel like your autopilot, your go-to is to just shut down. Let me tell you, you are doing a disservice to yourself by not actually moving through it. And you don't have to be perfect at moving through it. None of us are. Okay, we learn along the way. So have compassion for yourself, but also trust yourself that you're going to be able to get through it and navigate through it. Okay? With the communication piece, I want you to think about consistency as well too. Okay, if you're an avoidant and you want to move into secure attachment, I want you to think about consistency. Okay, think about, okay, how can I show up consistently for myself? How can I show up consistently for the person that I want to be with or the person that I am with? And that might look like little things of like, okay, I'm going to make the commitment that every morning I'm going to say, good morning. Good morning, my love. Okay, good morning, sunshine, whatever it is that you want to call your person. So it's an active commitment towards someone else, an active consistency towards someone else. And what's going to be the active consistency towards yourself? Is that going to be tuning into your body before you actually send that good morning message? Of like, okay, how am I feeling this morning? Can I check in with myself consistently? So checking in with yourself consistently first, and then taking that consistency with yourself and incorporating and integrating it into your relationship. So that way, you're pouring into yourself first. You're checking in with you first, and then you're becoming available for the person, your person, potential person, whatever it is, whatever situation you're in. And when you can build that consistency, it becomes a habit, right? Like, communication skills are really important, and then they become a habit. They become natural after. And that's how you build safety too. When someone knows, like, we build safety based on, like, our minds are predicting what this person is going to do. You know, when we wake up in the morning too, there's safety in knowing that the water's running and I know that I'm going to go brush my teeth as soon as I get up out of my bed. Okay? That creates safety for me. Imagine if every morning I woke up and, like, I didn't know that I wasn't going to have water running. I would wake up and I'd be like, fuck, like, how am I going to brush my teeth every day? And not knowing if the water was going to come on or not. But I know that my water comes on every fucking day. I am not confiding in water. This is a really weird analogy, but that is what came to my head. Oh my God. I gotta go to bed soon. I feel like I say this in every episode. I'm like, oh man, it's past my bedtime. You wanna know why? Because it's very rare that I record a podcast episode during the fucking day. It's always like, I'm about to go to bed. Wait, let me record a podcast episode before I do that. I just feel like, it's so funny. I went on my stories today. Oh, fuck, my computer's gonna die. Shit, we gotta wrap this up. Okay. What I was saying is I went on my stories today and I was like, late at night when all the world is sleeping, I stay up and podcast. The remix you didn't even know that you needed, because it's so true. Like literally when people are sleeping and it's just like calmer, I just feel like my energy calms down and I can like actually articulate what I want to articulate. I don't know. I love podcasting at night. So anyway, okay, we gotta wrap this up because my computer is about to die and I gotta go to bed. I gotta wake up and be present for my EMDR therapy training. All right. Okay, so I've left you with amazing tips. I've left you with explanations, and I want to go deeper into this, but you know what? Every avoidant situation, every avoidant individual, and again, these are just traits. You're not like an avoidant, and like you're not going to be an avoidant your whole life if you don't want to. Okay, but there is so much more deeper work that needs to be explored in order for you to move in the direction that you want to. And so this is where you sign up for my one-on-ones and we get you enrolled and I listen to your story and I'm going to teach you all it is around nervous system regulation, about your attachment style, about understanding your body signals, and I'm going to give you tools and exercises to do that is tailored to your specific body and your specific nervous system and your specific relationship. Everything is fucking customized, okay? You're gonna see the fucking most amazing transformation in your relationships, especially the one with yourself, because when you are literally fucking good with yourself, you're gonna be able to show up better for others. And I know that sounds so cliche, but it's the fucking truth. So think about the people that you want to show up for, including yourself, and ask yourself, well, how much longer am I fucking willing to continue to hurt people, to hurt myself? Ask yourself that, because that'll help you make a decision really fucking quickly of how you want to change. Now, my avoidance, I love you with all my fucking heart. I know it is hard living in that. It ain't easy. And you have resources to help you, like me. So I hope this episode helped. Send this to anybody that you're like, damn, you need to hear this, or damn, your partner needs to hear this. Send it to the whole fucking world. It would mean the world to me if you could rate the podcast, follow it, leave a comment, because we know that this work needs to be reaching everybody's relationship, because y'all know the state of the world right now. You know the state. And I'm here to elevate the state. I'm here to change those things, especially in love, because I'm so fucking passionate about it. Okay? So I'll see you in my one-on-one. Send me a DM. I would love to know what you took away from this episode. And just know that I love you deeply, just as you are. Okay. Have a beautiful day, beautiful night, my loves, whenever you're listening to this. And I'll see you on the next episode.